And it's now time to welcome to address us Ambassador Lisa Peterson, who is the most senior official dealing with human rights and democracy within the Biden administration. We'll now turn to Ambassador Peterson.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister Rasmussen, distinguished panelists and guests, it's a pleasure to be with you today. At a time when global challenges from climate change to COVID-19 have grown more complex and trust in democratic institutions is weakening, I'm glad to take a few minutes to outline how the Biden-Harris administration is placing democracy and human rights at the center of our domestic and foreign policy. Democracy remains an aspiration of people throughout the world. There's no better form of government for fostering peace, security, and prosperity globally. However, sustaining democracy requires hard work, careful stewardship, and constant vigilance. And it can be easy to forget that democracy is not a destination, it's a journey. At this conference, you're now hearing how authoritarian governments are exploiting and fostering declines in democracy, how they attempt to weaken democratic institutions, undermine democratic processes, and erode trust in democratic principles in other countries. Democratic backsliding and rising authoritarianism in countries around the world has disproportionately affected marginalized populations, threatening the inclusiveness necessary for a healthy democracy. As Secretary Blinken has said, the biggest threat to democracies isn't that they are flawed. They've always been. The greatest threat is that our citizens lose trust in democracy's ability to fix those flaws. A critical difference between democracies and autocracies is our ability and willingness to openly confront our own shortcomings, not to pretend they don't exist, ignore them, or sweep them under the rug. So we have to confront the democratic recession around the world. We all must speak up when countries backslide from democracy and human rights. That's what democracies do. We deal with challenges in the open. We also must help these countries move in the right direction by strengthening the guardrails of democracy, such as a free and independent press, anti-corruption bodies, and institutions that protect the rule of law. This is why the Biden-Harris administration is putting democracy and human rights at the center of U.S. foreign policy. We are committed to democratic renewal at home and abroad, and we hold ourselves, as well as our allies, accountable to our democratic commitments. The United States knows that our leadership and engagement on global issues matter. We've heard from our allies and partners, from many of you here today, that you're glad we're back. We know, too, that in our absence from key fora, such as the UN Human Rights Council, other democracies carried forward the work of defending human rights and driving progress on a range of global issues. We look forward to working with you. We approach U.S. re-engagement with humility, knowing that we have work to do here at home and knowing that we must rebuild our relationships with partners. Nevertheless, we will continue to push back forcefully when we see countries undermine the international order, pretend that the rules to which we've all agreed don't exist, or simply violate them at will. Because for the international system to deliver, all countries must abide by it and put in the work for its success. Broadly, our approach is to tackle today's challenges collaboratively. We aim to work with partners and alliances to positively impact the lives of people all over the world. We will work together with you to promote inclusive political participation, transparent and accountable governance, an enabling environment for civil society, respect for freedom of expression, and an independent media, all of which are key to strengthening democratic institutions and defending human rights and fundamental freedoms. We must remember that democracies and democratic institutions are only as strong and sustainable as they are inclusive. The United States will continue to strive for the full participation of all members of society, regardless of gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, or disability, in our own country and around the world. We must remember that democratic governments and institutions are only as strong and sustainable as they are transparent and accountable. The United States will continue to support anti-corruption and open government efforts. The combination of corruption and lack of transparency saps democratic resilience and undermines good governance. In fact, we've seen nations use the COVID-19 pandemic as a pretext to issue new laws to suppress anti-corruption and open government activism. We must remember that democracies and democratic institutions are only strong and sustainable if there is space and support for the vital work of civil society. A vibrant, diverse, and independent civil society is critical for, among other things, strengthening democratic institutions. We've been pleased to see instances of reform-minded governments reversing policies that stifled civil society voices, allowing for the expansion of the civic space so vital to achieving meaningful reforms. At the same time, we remain concerned by the global trend of diminishing space for civil society. Civil society is also increasingly facing restrictions in multilateral organizations such as the UN. So we work to protect and strengthen civil society through a variety of mechanisms. We emphasize that a key way to promote open civic space is to encourage collaboration and meaningful dialogue between government and civil society to address the challenges facing democracies. We also champion a role for civil society voices in multilateral fora. We believe everyone, everywhere, should be able to express themselves freely without undue restrictions, harassment, intimidation, or violence. Where such a conducive environment exists, there is free and open exchange of information. As a key part of its foreign policy, the United States promotes freedom of expression and an independent media as essential elements of resilient democracies. We advance these goals at the UN and in regional organizations. We also value the Freedom Online Coalition, Media Freedom Coalition, and other multi-stakeholder initiatives as platforms for finding new and innovative ways to address the complex and ever-evolving challenges facing people everywhere seeking to have their voices heard. We're increasingly concerned by government efforts to control internet access and content, including through the rampant use of internet shutdowns. Governments should not block, shut down, or throttle internet telecommunication or mobile services to suppress the right of peaceful assembly and freedoms of association and expression online. The United States is committed to working in partnership with members of the media, the private sector, non-governmental organizations, and other concerned governments to support access to information and defend freedom of expression, both online and offline. We recognize that no global challenge can be met by any one nation acting alone. Facing these challenges requires countries cooperating and collaborating in common cause. We are reaffirming, reinforcing, and reinvigorating our alliances and partnerships. And we are standing shoulder to shoulder with like-minded allies and partners to face shared challenges and to uphold our common values and a rules-based international order. As part of our commitment to democratic renewal at home and abroad, President Biden's planned Summit for Democracy will bring together allies and partners from government, civil society, and the private sector around a common agenda to defend democracy, including concrete commitments on combating corruption, countering authoritarianism, and advancing human rights. We will expect participating countries, including ourselves, to deliver on both international and domestic commitments that advance these goals, demonstrating the promise of democracy and delivering real results that allow people to lead lives of dignity, respect, and possibility. We hope the summit will be a catalyst for revitalizing democracy, both at home and abroad. Thank you again for the chance to participate in this discussion.
And Thank you, Ambassador Peterson, for laying out such a substantial agenda for catalyzing that revitalization of democracy. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.